Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, doctor, can hear you.
Yes, doctor.
يا لهوي.
Okay. Guys, you will get your grades for the midterm questions this Wednesday, okay? But so far, if you have any like queries or any questions regarding your term papers, please feel free to email me. I've got like 3 or 4 emails regarding the topics you already selected. So I'm just trying to gather all the questions you're going to write on, and then I'll post the materials on Moodle. So are you still making up regarding the term paper, regarding the question you're going to answer in your term papers, or all of you already selected? Yeah, okay, because I can't receive like individual emails, so the best way to go about it is you guys organize this between yourselves. You can like on your WhatsApp group or whatever, so you can like select like the questions you are going to write on, and then I'll post the like relevant material and sources regarding that would help you with answering the questions. Okay. So basically, I will offer like some readings that would help with the basic informational level, and then the application of the theory. You have to do like the readings assigned, I assigned for this course, and then the application will be up to you. It's like I'll measure your creativity with regard to applying theories or theoretical approaches to a specific topic. So what I'm going to help you with is like offering only the material that would help you gather some information and get like the basic level of information needed in order to process and then to apply the theories to some empirical the empirical cases you will select.
دكتور معلش.
Yeah.
هو معظم الدكتورز قدموا الميعاد بتاع مثلا تسليم الاساينمنتس وكده، يعني مثلا لو هو كان يوم 10/1 خلوه يبقى في اخر 12. فعندي سؤال، وحضرتك هتقدميه برضو ولا هيفضل ستيل زي ما هو 15/1؟
No. It will be the same. I don't know why actually.
علشان الفاينل بيقولوا هيقدموه هيبقى في رينج 13/1، فانا بجد اتصدمت.
They are going to change it.
بالظبط، ما انا عملت كده برضه.
I haven't received yet any emails.
ان شاء الله مش هيوصل، ان شاء الله مفيش حاجه تتقدم باذن الله.
Okay, yeah. So let's see, okay? But so far you have to start working on it anyway, okay?
دكتور طب هو
ليه
معلش
دكتور؟
الفاينل احنا هنتعامل معاه ازاي؟
Um, okay, I'll give you some instructions closer to the date, because so far I don't know, but most probably we're not going to have it on like in class exams. We're not going to have it in the faculty. So
يعني
I'm just
percentage
thinking about,
كبيرة هو مش
so we
هيكون
have
في
like we have two choices, like we can have it like on Blackboard. I'm not sure if you have tried this with other courses, or like take home exam, like similar to the midterm question.
يعني most probably هيكون زي research أو كده هنعمله زي الميد تيرم صح؟
Yeah, but from the assigned readings, from the syllabus, from the readings I
Okay,
listed
doctor.
in the syllabus. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So we're going to examine new topic this week, which is state-society relations, this lecture and the next one. So as I mentioned, we have like some theoretical questions with regard to these thematic topics, and we are trying to offer or to examine what the existing studies actually offer in order to answer these or to bear on these theoretical issues, or to offer satisfactory answers to these theoretical questions. From your like introductory course to political science, if I ask you what the state is, how you guys would define state?
Define territory which has a certain authority.
Yeah.
With people within it.
Yeah. So this is like the definition actually you learned about in your introduction to political science. It's like a specific territorial domain with geographical boundaries, and the state or the state apparatuses would actually practice sovereignty, or they have like the ultimate authority with regard to organization, with regard to organizing and regulating every single aspect of the social order, and to regulate and discipline actually the citizens or the population actually lived in these specific domain or these specific territorial domains. And from your political thought, have you studied Hobbes?
Yes, we studied it in the first year, the social contract and things like that.
Yeah. So why people need the state as an organization or an organizing device?
Because man is defined as a social animal who cannot live alone without a state or people. He need to interact and engage more.
To prevent chaos?
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay. Heidi, yeah, go on. Heidi, you can go on.
To prevent chaos between the people and how they organize their priorities or how they seek their interest. So there needs to be an entity that sets laws to.
Yeah, to end this state of war of all against all.
Exactly.
Okay, so they need like a state in order to safeguard their properties and to guarantee their physical security. So from like the 17th century through the 19th century or the 20th century, actually like the concept of state actually had so many or survived, or the state as an like a specific set of organizations survived several junctures or critical moments of great political and social transformations, like the industrial revolutions and the expansion of a capitalist system that actually obliged political leadership to reshape and to reconfigure the institutions in order to respond to or to adjust to these great political and social transformations. But regardless of like these critical moments or these like critical junctures or great transformations that led to reshaping the state apparatuses or the state institutions and configurations. When we talk about states, so we mainly cover, or we examine two main central components. We look at, or we investigate how the state actually managed to establish centralized and comprehensive political authority in order to penetrate every single aspect in society, and how it actually regulate and promulgate laws in order to preserve social order. So what kind of organizational settings or organizational capacity the state would have in order to preserve or to guarantee this kind of stability and order. So on the one hand, so you have like very famous Weberian notion or definition of the state. It's actually a specific like set of institutions that monopolize the legitimate use of physical force. So the state only has the legitimate right in order to use coercion or physical force in the face of any internal or external threats. And as well, like centralization of political administration. So the state has to have this kind of rationalized, modern state, rationalized bureaucracy in order to enable the state to to make laws and to implement laws and policies, and to adjudicate, to offer like some institutional system, like judicial system, for example, to adjudicate and arbitrate between different and to resolve different disputes between citizens. So in order to investigate, what kind of political authority, comprehensive political authority the state has, and what kind of laws, regulations, and norms and values the state instilled in society. So we need to examine like these state apparatuses, mainly the coercive apparatuses and the bureaucratic apparatuses that would enable the state to maintain its power, or to maintain its political authority, and to maintain its social control. And another like famous definition by Michael Mann as well, he mentioned something about the sources of social power or infrastructure power of the state. He referred to the capacity, what kind of sources that would enable the state or would enhance or harness its capacity in order to penetrate civil society and to implement logistically, to have like the logistical tool in order to implement the political decisions throughout the realm. So can you guys, like from these two definitions, tell me, or like try to drive like the basic elements we need to investigate in order to define a state, or to examine the main components of the state from these two definitions, Max Weber and Michael Mann?
I guess the legislative branches اللي هي بتنظم ال interaction between people, we have to investigate this.
So the apparatuses, so you need to look into why exactly or specifically the legislative branch.
Doctor,
Yeah?
I'm not sure, but I think it's related to order and regulations authority.
Yeah, these are the central components from like several definitions actually offered by many scholars to the state. So we need to cover, or we need to understand how the state establishes, or historically with the processes of state building, how the state managed to establish the centralized political administration on the one hand, and kept on reproducing its power in society, kept on reproducing, making regulations, making laws in order to guarantee to protect like the social, the public order, and to guarantee a stable political system. But again, from these notions, so let me ask it differently. So like Max Weber definition focuses mainly on the state apparatuses. So what's the main element in Michael Mann's definition? Like obviously, the Weberian notion of the state covers mainly the coercive apparatuses or the military capacity of the state, that it actually monopolizes the legitimate use of physical violence. And this rationalized bureaucracy, so he focused mainly on the bureaucratic apparatuses that would make and implement and formulate particular public policies, and to enable the state or to enhance the extractive power, like to extract revenues in order to enable the state to make policies and to implement these policies. So this is like, on the one hand, this is the focus on the state institutions and the processes of making regulations and keeping and maintaining public order. But what's the main element and component in Michael Mann's definition? The capacity to penetrate civil society and to implement logistically political decisions.
I think يا دكتور إن هو I think he's talking about some laws to be put.
Any more thoughts on this?
I think maybe by logistically political decisions, he means some practical or some researched ways to implement these laws so that they can last or they can be implemented in the whole regime or the whole state.
Yeah, it has something to do with this penetration of civil society, how the state actually, for example, you have a question on Iraq, okay? So after the disintegration of the monarchy and the establishment of the republic, so it faced like bloody period of fierce elite struggle and several military coups in order to establish between different competitors or between different rivals in order to establish their political authority or to establish their dominance. But actually the state didn't have this kind of penetration into civil society or like across different parts of the state within its territorial domain, within this like delimited geographical boundaries. So with the establishment of the Ba'ath Party, so the Ba'ath Party established its own like local branches in order to enable the state to implement, to penetrate, you know, these different social enclaves or local enclaves, and to implement the state policies and to establish state authority and to yeah.
دكتور أنا آسفة بس الصوت قطع عندي. احنا قلنا اللي حضرتك كنتي بتسألي ايه هي المين elements اللي احنا هندرسها في المايكل مان، فأنا ما سمعتش بعد إذن حضرتك يعني. آسفة الصوت قطع.
Yeah, okay, I'm still explaining this.
تمام
Okay. دكتور
Yeah.
sorry for interruption أنا كمان، بس روضة مراد محتاجة حضرتك تدخليها.
Okay. Okay, so basically it's the capacity, how the state actually would enhance its capacity in order to penetrate different like social domains or different local areas, and to guarantee the establishment of its political authority and the implementation of its authoritative decisions and binding rules. As I gave you example, you have a question on Iraq for your term papers. You have like how the state actually managed to build its infrastructure power and to get like some sources of its social power to penetrate and to establish its legitimate authority over every single space in its territorial domain. So what happened, as I mentioned, after the Ba'ath Party managed actually to take over power and to establish the political authority at the national level. So the party established its own local branches across the country in order to enable the implementation of the national decisions or the political authority at the national level. It would resonate at the local level. So it has something to do not only with the establishment of like the state may have its military establishment, the state may have its parliament or legislative branch and its executive authority and judicial system, but actually still some areas would be like isolated and far or beyond the reach of the state. So the state has to establish some like or invent or create some organizational devices in order to enable it to penetrate these social enclaves and to guarantee the establishment of its national or its political, comprehensive political authority. So from these two definitions, we have like some theoretical questions regarding like this like simple definition of the state that's limited or reduced to these kind of territorial domains with geographical boundaries and like population size, and the state would practice its sovereignty over its own population. So from this coverage of state institutions and penetration into gaining kind of control over civil society or social associations. So the questions that would pop up to mind are, can we treat the state as an organic entity, as like a coherent whole with like a specific extensive set of institutions and organizations, or we should offer a different, we should perceive it differently and we should offer a different definition to the state, and we put it in interactive relationship with social forces and civil society organizations or social associations. So we focus on the state as organic whole, or like we can adopt kind of deconstructionist approach in order to perceive the state in more interactive relations between the state and the society. So the major point here, or one of the central component of the state, is to establish comprehensive political authority or its own domination over society or throughout the realm, as Michael Mann mentioned. So are these different, like can we speak of different patterns of domination? So the state can take the lead in establishing or enforcing and imposing this all-encompassing, a dominant position, or civil society or some social forces and social actors and social enclaves may have their own degree of autonomy that may push back against, this dominant position of the state or the political authority of the state. So it has something to do with again, like this kind of interaction between the state authority or the state institutions and different social forces. So we cannot speak of as Migdal mentioned, integrative domination approach or dispersed domination perspective or dispersed aspect of political domination. So it has something to do with this like degree of autonomy of different social actors and patterns of interactions between these social forces and social actors and state apparatuses or state institutions. We are going to answer these questions in some detail. And if we agree to this definition of the state, this deconstructionist approach of different, institutional configurations or organizations on the one hand, and its relations or interactions with social forces and civil society organizations on the other. So how the state, over a long period of time, these institutions, organizations remained intact. In order to remain intact, so the state has to reproduce its legitimate authority. So the state has to make sure that the population or the citizens would comply with these regulations and laws in order to maintain stability and public order. So in order to reproduce this kind of legitimate authority, so the state relies heavily or exclusively on the coercive apparatuses or coercion, or it has something to do with the degree of apprehension or understanding of the population, that they have their own cognitive map and their specific meaning or internalization of specific norms and values that would maintain and keep the social order intact and would confer legitimacy to the state institutions and state apparatuses. So moving or from, you know, this kind of specific meaning, or turning the focus or shifting the focus to in order to understand how citizens actually perceive a state and what kind of meaning they would assign to this legitimate position or legitimate authority of the state. So from this angle, so what constitutes, people may have this kind of national identity that they have their perception about their perception of belonging and dependence on the state. So they forge or they create, you know, this kind of national identity, and like what constitutes how national identity, or where actually it comes from, or how it emerged, you know, in the first place. It's only a cultural construct from like people's interaction in this like a specific territorial domain. So from their interactions, they may assign different meaning to the social order and the political authority, and hence, you know, they can develop, you know, this like cognitive element, or this image of national identity, or it has something to do with the existing or pre-existing structural patterns that actually matter with regard to constituting these national identities, or people's identities that actually perpetuate, you know, the legitimate position of the political authority of the state. And in order to answer this question, so we try to tackle two main points. The first one, the role of the political elites, or the top personnel of the political institutions, or the ruling elites, in creating this imaginative capacity in order to talk about nationalism and national identity. These are ideas, imagined ideas, how like elites create or constitute these imaginative qualities of nationalism in order to create or to forge these national identities, and the implications for the processes of state building in order to establish these public administration or centralized political authority and centralized political administration or administrative structure. So this would acquire over time a national character. So the implications for like the state building and political institutions on perpetuating, you know, this national identity. Hopefully we will cover like these two questions next lecture, with a specific focus on Nasserism and corporatism in Egypt, and the implications for state building and central political institutions in Latin America, with Kurt's chapter on state building in Latin America. And this lecture, we are trying to grapple with the definition of the state. It's much more complicated than this simple, like the simple notion or this simplistic approach, you know, you learned about in your introduction to political science. So how can we develop or this kind of interactive approach with regard to state-society relation, and the main implications and repercussions for different patterns of domination, and how the state keeps on reproducing its legitimate authority in society. So again, so we put them like together in interactive terms. So starting with the first question, like the perception of the state as a coherent whole, or we can adopt like this deconstructionist approach of the state in order to examine its interactions and different patterns of domination with different social forces and different civil society organizations. So for a long period of time, there was like a widespread belief that the state, not in order to make sure of the applicability and the acceptability of its of the laws or the implementation of the laws and regulations, and therefore maintaining the public order and getting people conforming to its legal frameworks and regulations. So the state doesn't only rely on coercive apparatuses, but also it has to to adopt, you know, some sort of or to build some sort of symbolic power resources. Meaning, so the state, what the literature mentions, the state for a long period of time, there was like exaggeration about the role of the state in defining the position of the citizens, or you as a citizen. So the state would impose or shape your perception and understanding about your relationship with others and your relationship with the social order. So the state would define what's right and what's wrong, what matters most and what actually doesn't matter to you. So the state actually determines on your behalf so what you can do and what you cannot do. So the state would establish this moral order, so by certain sets of laws, and it would enhance this not only by the coercive apparatuses but also with the media and the education system that would perpetuate, you know, this moral order, and the would make it self-reinforcing. So the state would actually shape and mold your daily behavior and would discipline your daily task, what you can do, what you cannot do, what tasks you can implement, and what tasks you can avoid. And this would project, you know, what the literature mentioned, this aura of invincibility. So the state, you know, has like this all-encompassing power and authority in order to impose and mold this moral order. But this idea about this like symbolic power resources and treating, you know, this state-centric or state-based approach became like or came into like criticism, because it continues to believe in the state as a actually approaching the state through this holistic overview, and relegating or actually marginalizing social forces, or denying the agency of these social forces. So that's why they started like different studies, or scholars tried to investigate how the state actually survived different critical moments or great transformations. And basically the literature focuses mainly on the modernization and industrial revolutions that led to like this urbanization and industrialization, and led to like dislocation and developing, you know, this new sense of belonging and new patterns of socialization and new attitudes and the new behavioral norms. So with this kind of great transformations, so the state or the political leadership had to reshape and reconfigure the their political institutions, but they cannot do it alone. So the political leaders, or in order to reshape political institutions, they had to engage in or to involve in different patterns of interactions with social forces or different social classes from Marxist perspectives. So in order to establish like this parliamentary system or parliamentary institutions, so the state had to go through this struggle and conflict and coalition building with different industrialists or different landowners or landlords, in order to reshape these institutions and reshape people's attitudes, or to forge this new sense of national belonging or national identity. So you have to to situate like these political the installation or the establishment and the creation of these political institutions in relation to different social forces and different social relations, that it actually historically took different forms, like from conflict and opposition to accommodation and coalition building. So the main point here, just to move beyond this holistic view of the state as a coherent whole, as like certain sets of different organizations and different institutions that enable these institutions enable political leadership to formulate public policies and to implement these policies. So moving beyond this state-centered approach, so you have to adopt like more interactive approach and bring society back into the analysis and to examine, you know, the interactive relationship between both of them. it's kind of mutual transformation over time that established and that shaped and reshaped different patterns of domination, that it would be integrative domination, that the state would manage to establish would take the lead and in establishing its political authority across the board, or dispersed domination, like some political group, some social groups would have like enjoy some degree of autonomy and would have like their own influence, not only on decision making or public policy making, but also in this kind of production and reproduction of the moral order. So I have, can you have like, yeah?
دكتور انا معلش يعني في حاجه مش
Yeah,
فاهماها.
it's a theoretical. Yeah, it's okay. Like let me let me give you an example.
Okay.
Okay. So it's common knowledge that the legislative body would like make laws with regard to like imposition of taxes, and how in order how as a you as a citizen like you have to pay your dues or pay your taxes, otherwise you will get like penalized because of the penal code. With regard to the moral order, for example, what you can do and what you cannot do, let's have like an example from the Egyptian context. Okay, the Sharia law, for example. So how it's like one of the constitutional article actually stipulates that like Sharia is one of the sources of the legislation in Egypt, one sources of legislation. So the state would define, would like censor some like artworks because actually they are inappropriate, or they actually run they are they run against, you know, the existing moral order, the existing moral law. So for a long period of time, there was like a wide belief that the state, you know, would dictate, you know, this moral order on society. But if you try to see this from a different perspective or from a different angle, that was like in response to, you have to investigate the context within which, you know, the state like issued or stipulated, you know, this article in the constitution. So you have to look into or to investigate different social forces, like the revival of like some Islamist or the Islamic revival during this period that actually dominated or controlled different social spaces. So that's why from this kind of interactive term, the state actually responded to what was already there in a way or another, and codified, you know, these kind of moral obligations and moral orders into particular laws. So the sense is, in order to investigate how the state would issue or make some laws in order to reproduce its power in society, not only how like Sadat actually came up with this idea, or how like the parliament actually issued or ratified the constitutional amendments, but you need to examine what kind of social forces were already there in society, and what degree of autonomy they had, and what type of interactions between different actors, different social forces that actually pushed the elites in order to take this decision. Like the historical moment, it's kind of the balance in order to balance out, or in order to counterweight the effect of the communist or the leftist. So like Sadat tried to appease or to win Islamists over by making this agreeing to this like constitutional article in order to establish the moral order in Islamic terms, or Islamic sense. What to do and what not to do. Okay. يارا
دكتور
يا
تمام. يعني الحتة دي بتتكلم ان كان في يعني different perspective للمعنى الستيت، ان مثلا انا اول حاجه خدناها اللي هي السوشيال اند سيمبوليك باور، ان هنا بيindicate ان الستيت دي هي اللي بتحدد المورالز وبتقول ايه اللي بنعمله وايه اللي ما نعملوش. بعد كده كان في كريتيسيزم لوجهه النظر دي، ان هما في ناس شايفينها ان هي هوليستيك فيو، فلازم ان اللي هم الليدرشيب وكده يبيلد political institution، بس لازم يinvolve وengaged in السيت اوف بليفز والحاجات دي.
yeah, the political
انا داخله
institutions
في
and the system of laws and regulations in interaction with different social forces.
اه
Okay, you will, it's in a, like gradually you will grasp the idea.
تمام يا دكتور،
Okay.
شكرا.
Uh, so the first point here, so the like I'll try to give you the map toward the end of the lecture, but like the main point here is different definitions of the state that tackle this from tackle the state or the components, the main components of the state from different perspectives, from institutional perspective, or from like states, the social sources or the infrastructure power of the state. And Migdal here tried to, he actually introduced, we're getting to this later, a state in society approach, like how to bring them together in order to investigate, you know, the interactive relationship between both of them, that you cannot examine the state in through this holistic view as an organic whole or organic entity. So you have to deconstruct the state institutions on the one hand and put these different institutions, different arenas, in relation to different or multiple players or multiple social forces in society. So they contested, you know, this state-based approach in order to offer like more interactive and deconstructionist approach to the state institutions and its relationship and interaction with state forces. So that's the state. So we keep talking about society and social forces, but what society really is. So if I ask you how you guys define society.
I'm a group of people that have to follow the laws that the state اللي بتحددها زي ما قلنا فوق.
No,
يعني
forget about the state right now, and we focus on like separately on the society. So we define the state like the main component
people
is the
that
political.
have to act with each other to achieve مثلا their goals, to meet their needs.
Okay. So
ممكن يا دكتور نقول a group of people who follow their customs and traditions
okay.
بعيدا عن the state والlaws يعني.
Yeah.
هما كده عندهم العرف الخاص بيهم يعني.
Yeah. So some like private citizens that they are not like decision makers and they don't have like any stake in like the political processes or the formulation of public policies and the implementation of the decision making. They are interacting together, but the influence in a way or another by offering like legitimate basis of the state authority. So the state actually cares about social forces because they have to abide by the laws to maintain the public order and to maintain stability on the one hand, and they offer like legitimate basis as well. They have to buy into these symbolic power resources. They have to buy into this moral order in order to perpetuate and reproduce, you know, the state domination or the state political authority. So again, theoretically, we have like different perspectives of society. So you have like one point of view that actually comes from the Marxist traditions. So what actually Marx said about state-society relation or social classes and the state relations. How actually Marx perceived society. Guys, we already studied this in the structuralism week. He divided like society into the ruling class, and the state is an instrument in their hands in order to perpetuate their supremacy and their dominant position, and to maintain their to preserve their economic and political status, and other like constructed social classes, and it all depends on their position or the mode of production, the economic structure, or their position in the mode of production, like peasant or workers in the feudal system and in capitalist system. And then he perceived like the society in terms of constructed classes, or the position of different classes in relations to the means of productions and the mode of production. And these classes, as he treated them as like a coherent whole as well. That they have like cohesive class project, and they work together towards like common goal in order to have like repercussions, or to like this project would transform the society in a way or another. Like for proletariat, for example, they may work together in order to have their own revolution and to establish the dictatorship of the proletariats, and to dismantle, the capitalist structure. So what the literature does here, so the literature, again, with regard to the conceptions or different streams in the literature, so they try to be critical of this state or of this society-centric approaches as well, as McDowell did with the state, like not only organizational or institutional structures, but also its relationship with the society. He did the same thing with regard to the society. He tried to refute, the dominant or the predominant approaches with regard to the definition of society from Marxist perspectives and from liberal traditional perspectives as well. So with regard to the Marxist traditions, he tried to refute or to pick apart, this conception about cohesive class project, that actually different historical patterns and empirical evidence actually refuted this and ran against, this cohesive class project. So, for example, adopting, this Marxist viewpoint or Marxist traditions, like before the free officers took over power, there were divisions between different business elites in Egypt. According to Marxist traditions, all industrialists and landowners, they have to work together, that they may have like their nationalist sentiments in order to fight against British colonialism. So they may like get together and they advance their own common project. They may advance their own common project in order to transform the social order in Egypt before the free of in the pre-1952 period. But effectively, realistically, what happened, there were divisions between different groups. Like industrialists, they have their own interest or economic interest in indigenizing, or they have like their own Egyptianizing the economy or the industry, while landowners or landlords, they develop their ties with the British with the British authority. They have like they were deeply embedded in economic transactions by exporting their cotton crops to global market. So they didn't get like they didn't have like a common project, social project with the industrialists in order to transform the social order in the pre-independence period. So like refuting these Marxist traditions, so what about liberal traditions as well? According to liberal traditions, they perceive society as different groups. You guys like different, so as you mentioned, different social forces or different social groups. They compete over like redistributive question, who gets what. So the they compete, they need to influence the the trajectory of the public policy decisions. As business group, they need like some protectionist measures. So they need to influence the decision makers in order to make some laws in order to protect their national industries from and to shield these industries from international competition. So they need like the state to impose some tariffs on trade in order to protect their economic interest. So they perceive like liberal traditions, different social groups or different social forces, they have like they function in overarching pluralistic framework. This is the umbrella or the rules of the game. So they compete on equal footing in order to influence the public policy or the decision making process. But again, this idea is harshly or is criticized by actually avoiding or glossing over how the competition not only over influencing public policies, but also over these rules of the game, where these rules of the game initially emerged, like different like power relations between different social groups, like like export-oriented, business people, they are much more powerful than inward-oriented business associations. So they may have like greater leverage or power resources in order to impose, these rules of the game, in order to create, this overarching framework within which different players, are actually competing or influencing decision-making process. So again, like neither Marxist traditions or liberal traditions would offer us plausible explanations about this struggle, this power struggle within the social domain, and different forms of domination between different forms of domination state actually imposed over social forces or over social domains. So in order to understand thoroughly, actually examine these forms of conflicts and these forms of coalition building or accommodation between different forces between state society, so you have to break it down to different arenas of domination and opposition. So you need to examine how different forces, to break it down into specific elements or multiple arenas, in order to examine in what areas the state may have like domination, and in what areas the state would face some challenges or opposition from social forces. And this is not only related to public policy or economic dictates or over disputes over material issues like preserving property rights or redistributive issues, but also like there have always been like contestations over reproductions of samples and moral order. As I mentioned, like Islamists, for example, during the 80s, there are charitable in Egypt. The charitable organizations or Islamic associations in Egypt, they contested, they actually carved out their social space by using their charitable or Islamic associations in order to provide some public and collective goods, but also not only material, but not only contesting or challenging the state with regard to redistributive or economic policies, but also they contested or challenged the state with regard to this moral order as well. So they developed, this conception of dawah. So they used their charitable institutions or associations in order to distribute some material benefits and collective goods. But also they offer, some, they have like ideological underpinning in order to reproduce different moral order that would contest, or would challenge actually the state. And this led to like this kind of, initially the state enabled them to work. It was like dispersed like domination, because in a way or another they helped the state with providing some social services in marginalized areas in the states, actually in areas that the state didn't manage to reach and to build social safety nets in these areas. So in a way, they benefited the state by offering or providing some collective goods. So it was like dispersed domination for some time. But then when they started actually to develop more like autonomous power in society, so the state had to impose its political authority, or to like to impose its integrative domination over these Islamic associations or Islamist forces there. So it had like you have to approach this from dynamic perspective. It's not like fixed or static. So you have to interrogate. So you have to examine different arenas of domination, opposition, and how different patterns of interaction between the state apparatuses or state institutions and different social forces would help the state reproduce its power within society over a long period of time. So the question is how to investigate, you know, the interactions. Yeah.
I think Mustafa Atif had the problem with his electricity, so he wants to join in once more.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So actually, in order to like from a state-centric perspective or state-based perspective or society-based perspectives, neither this nor that would help us understand different patterns of interactions between state and society, different patterns of conflict, different patterns of the state has to build coalitions, the state had to accommodate some interest in some period, and in other periods actually the state had to go into like fierce struggle and conflict with social forces. So in order to answer how the state actually reproduces its political authority and its power within society, so you have to pay attention to different patterns of interactions between the state, different apparatuses of the state as a political institution, and different social forces as well. So in what arena actually the state has to accommodate or has to go into a conflict or has to challenge these social forces. So it's all about the question of power, how the state would reproduce its dominance in order to maintain its comprehensive political authority, and the degree of autonomy of different social actors. And from these kind of patterns of interactions between state and society, so we can understand different patterns of state domination and different patterns or different degrees of social autonomy within the social domain. So it's kind of mutual transformation between both of them that eventually would lead to the change in the ideological basis and the organizational coherence of the state. So again, like before the free officers took over power in 1952, so they had like different, the regime or the monarchical regime like had different ideological orientation or different ideological basis and organizational basis, which actually centrally predicated on the monarchy and the power triangle between like the Wafd, the monarch, and the British authority. And then with the free officers actually taking over power, they changed the ideological basis of the state apparatuses, bringing, you know, the military to the center of as the center of the state institutions, and they changed actually the ideological basis and the organizational coherence of the state. We're getting to this in some detail in the next lecture. But here, in order to investigate or to examine this question of reproduction of power in society, so you need to understand this kind of the mutual transformation between state and society and how this would lead to change in the ideological basis on the one hand, on the other hand, the formulation and the implementation of public policies as well. So the free officers ushered in far-reaching redistributive and economic programs that these programs were entirely different from the programs implemented during, you know, the or pre 1952 period. And again, like within the state even, so you need to disintegrate, to adopt, you know, this deconstructionist approach to the state apparatuses. So you cannot deal with the the bureaucratic apparatuses as a coherent whole. So sometimes, you know, some ministries, for example, would implement or would formulate certain public policies, but like middle level bureaucrats or like elites at the local level, that they may have their influence over the implementation, that they may block the advance or the implementation of these policies. So you need to examine the power relations between different state institutions on the one hand, and between these different state institutions and different social forces on the other hand, with different degree of autonomy, with different bargaining leverage, with different power resources, economic, material resources, or symbolic and moral resources, as well as business people, for example, or like Islamists that they may in Egypt, that they may have like different ideological predispositions and different repertoire of symbolic resources or different norms and different behaviors that would contest or challenge, you know, the moral order imposed by the state, or the state actually delineated its boundaries. So what Migdal actually tried to do here, he developed like this approach. He called it like state in society, in order to examine different forms of domination and different degrees of autonomy. So you need like in different arenas, in different over like the long period of time, how the state managed or to impose its dominant political authority, and how different social actors or social forces acquired some degrees of autonomy, and from this kind of mutuality between both of them, and bringing, you know, the agency of different societal components back into the analysis, so you can understand the state dictates what kind of laws, orders, regulations the state actually imposed or made in order to impose social or to have like social control over different social domains, and what kind of power resources and social forces, what kind of symbolic power or economic power they have in order to have like increase their bargaining leverage to oppose or to challenge state domination or state authority. Any questions so far? Okay, so if I ask you,
complicated
yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, تمام.
Yeah.
تمام.
But hopefully, yeah, because it's level of abstraction. But I'll try, you know, to offer some more examples next lecture. Okay, but for now, yeah.
معلش انا اسفه على بقاطع حضرتك، بس هو احنا جالنا ايميل دلوقتي حالا بيقول ان الامتحانات هتبدأ يوم 16/1 وهتنتهي 4 فبراير.
يا دكتور جاي لنا كمان دلوقتي.
هو مكتوب ان دي الاجندة بتاعت العام الدراسي وكده، هتبتدي الامتحانات امتى وهتنتهي امتى.
Okay, can we guys like talk about this toward the end of the lecture, and hopefully we can decide on this lecture. Otherwise we can defer it to the next lecture on Wednesday. Okay, to think through this.
تمام يا دكتور.
Okay, so with the definitions and notions of state and society, and how Migdal actually offered this state in society approach in order to understand different patterns of interaction, and adopting, you know, this deconstructionist approach to both like state and society, in order to examine different patterns of domination and degrees of autonomy, both like at the state level and at the society level. If I ask you guys how the state manages to reproduce its power in society, why you guys, in order to reproduce its political authority, this comprehensive political authority, so you have to show some sort of compliance to or abidance by the public or the public laws and the regulations imposed by the state. So why you as like a citizen would buy into would abide by these laws and buy into these symbolic resources or symbolic power of the state, like delineating what to do, what not to do, what's right and what's wrong. So what's the underlying logic here? There is no like correct or incorrect. Just try to guess.
I think because the authority is not fixed or static, sorry, we should examine the domination and test the different social interaction.
Yeah, this is the main point.
And yes, and test the or pay attention to the different patterns of interaction within the state, whether it's the authority or the social forces.
Yeah. This is like the level of the abstraction. Okay, so this is the abstract level. Okay, so the state has to reproduce its political authority, but in order to reproduce its political authority, social forces have to have some degree of comprehension and apprehension of these symbolic power in order to reproduce, to be like self-reinforcing. So sometimes, you know, they would conform to, and other times they would oppose. But eventually the state remains intact. The state managed to, so we examine like state-society relations. Obviously, the state that actually managed over a long period of time to maintain its political authority. We are not talking about like state collapse or fragile state. So we're talking about a state that actually over a long period of time keeps on reproducing its power in society. So in order to reproduce this power, so the state like has to formulate, its ideological foundation has to formulate and implement particular public policies in order to offer like some material benefits to its citizens. And on the other hand, citizens, they have to show like their obedience to these regulations and to the moral order and the public order as well, working within the limits delineated by the state. So from this, like from these facts, if I ask you about the underlying logics of reproduction of power in society, what would enable a state to reproduce its power in society? Because in order to reproduce its power in society, or to keep on actually creating its and inventing and reinventing its political authority and its ideological basis, so people have to buy into this master narrative, and they have to offer like legitimate basis to this political authority. So why people would offer, you know, their would offer legitimacy to state actions and state political authority?
I think maybe it meets their interests, or it achieves what the individuals are trying to achieve.
Yeah. One explanation from the theoretical approaches you studied, guys, in the first half of the lecture, and it's a variant of the organization theory. It's kind of rationalist and functionalist approach. With these like great political and social transformations, mainly like the actually the literature, or like the vast majority, the studies actually, almost all the studies, I actually refer to the emergence of the modern state, you know, to industrialization and the capitalist expansion. So with this kind of great transformations in society, these transformations created new patterns of socializations that created the need like to have like to develop this sense of belonging and to depend on the state on a way or another in order to get access to the collective. So you need like to develop, you know, this sense of belonging, to have national identity, that you actually belong to this territorial domain and this social order, and you are dependent on the state in order to protect you physically, to offer you like physical security, and to give you access to collective goods as well. So it's kind of a trade between you as a citizen and the state. So the state would offer you some economic and material benefits, and to protect you physically would offer you physical security, and in exchange for your fulfillment of some obligations, like abiding by the laws and the certain regulations imposed by the state. But again, there is a problem with this. Can you guess what's the problem with this explanation? So the state has to offer like keeps on like continue. The state has to continue on offering material goods and some benefits, and it has to keep its organizational coherence in order to efficiently deliver these public goods. And this, in return, you will pay it back by abiding by the norm, the public norms and the public laws and regulations. What's the problem with this explanation?
I think this can turn into. I think it can turn into a blackmailing situation where the government kind of abuses its power, and or maybe holds back the benefits it's giving, so that people would abide by its laws.
Yeah, and the question is, so the flip side of this, if the state actually ceases to delivering or providing you with some material benefits, would you guys like cease to offering or conferring, you know, legitimacy to its political authority? That would eventually lead to like more centrifugal tendencies and disintegration of the state, like in Syria, for example. So this would this explanation hold? Was some like severe disruptive event like this prolonged civil war there, and still like the Assad regime like had legitimacy. In order to have legitimacy and to reproduce its political authority and political power, he needed international recognition and international intervention on the one hand, but domestically people like they have to offer this legitimate basis to Al-Assad family in order to keep on going. So there's roughly no synergy between this cohesive, you know, organizational structure and accessing public good or even physical security, and the state actually remained intact, obviously, so far. So the problem with this, it doesn't help us understand some critical events or disruptive events that would preclude the state or prevent the state from providing these material goods or material benefits, and that happened, you know, during the modernization period as well, with the rising, you know, expectations that led to frustration and severe or social mobilization that eventually led to institutional decay. But in some cases, in Latin America, for example, the state, you know, didn't fade away. So the state actually remained intact. This led to different regime types or different formulation of public policies and different regime rules. But the state as a state kept reproducing its power as like a set of this institutional configurations and penetration into imposing its political authority over different social forces and different social domains. So this explanation doesn't help us, this functionalist and rationalist explanation doesn't help us understand how the state would maintain its power, regardless of its organizational coherence and the quality or the efficiency of delivering public goods or regardless of its responsiveness to the needs of its own citizens. So another explanations offered by sociologists or sociological institutionalists. So they would tell us something like, you guys, you as a citizen would abide by the state's laws or rules and regulations because they became like natural part of your daily lives. So you cannot imagine your lives, this kind of habits and naturalization or internalization processes actually hardwired into your brain, that you cannot imagine your daily lives without the state, without the existence of the state. So it's part from the landscape surrounding you. So no matter how coherent its organizations are, or how efficient these organizations actually are with regard to or with respect to delivering some public goods, it doesn't matter, but it's kind of habits and routines that actually made you rather than utility maximizing or functionalist approach. So it's more related to you got used to this, you're accustomed to this, and it became like integral part of your routines and habits. So the state would it becomes like integral part of your behavior and your attitudes, that the state would determine for you what's appropriate and what's inappropriate, would determine your position and responsibility, what you have to do, what you have you have to pay taxes, so you have to abide by like public regulations and the moral order or the ethic codes imposed by the state. But again, this explanation is trapped, social components or social elements of their agency. So they would perceive as they would perceive you as a citizen as a passive defender against any centrifugal or disintegrative tendencies. So it doesn't it doesn't assign any kind of active role for you as a citizen in order to get engaged in these ceremonies or in these rituals. It's actually passivity and naturalization and habits and routines that would push you to get involved in these routinized acts. So with these kind of inefficient explanations of both like rationality and passivity of organization theory or sociological institutionalist theory, so here some studies focused on the meaning, you as a citizen. So this is like the missing part between rationality and passivity, between like rationality and sociological explanation. So in order to, you need to develop your own, to assign your own meaning to these regulations and to this social and public order in order to abide by or to conform to these laws and these rules. So this is like the missing part. So we need to examine. So this is like the crucial part. It's hard actually to grasp and to get at, but this is like what would connect, your like rational calculations and your sociological practices or habits and routines, and this would enable you these kind of meaning and reproduction of meaning would enable citizens to continue abiding by the rules and the regulations of the state. So we need to investigate these processes of generating different meaning in order to offer legitimacy to the state, how salient the state is in your mind, and your understanding and your meaning, the meaning you assign to your interest and different threats and possibilities. The state actually would take some measures with respect to them, and this forging of national identity. So you need like meaning and this kind of how national identity would emerge in order to enable you to offer like legitimate basis for the state or the political authority to keep on reproducing its comprehensive political domination over public sphere and different social domains. Okay, so next time we will talk more about this in some detail about the meaning and the generation of citizens or public meaning from like social forces, and the forging of this national identity and these ideals of national identity, and whether or not cultural approach would help us understand fully this meaning, the construction of the meaning and the national identity, or we need to situate this or to position this in the pre-existing structural patterns as well. So we need both like cultural approach and internalization of cultural norms and some some structural properties as well. So next time we will cover these two components and elements together with the role of the post-colonial elites in engineering state-society relation and forging this sense or imaginative quality of national identity, and the long-term implications and repercussions for the coherence of state administration or political administration and central authority. Okay, I know it's too much theories and theoretical approaches here, but hopefully like next lecture I can bring things like together and with some application with some application of these theories to the Egyptian context and Latin American context, so you can like fully understand this abstraction level of a state-society relation. Okay.
Okay, doctor.
Okay, so let's talk about your term paper, the deadline for your term papers. Yeah.
لسه بالظبط من كام دقيقة جه ايميل من دكتور حنان ان الفاينل هيبقى يوم 16 يناير اللي هو بعد الترم بيبر بيوم بالظبط، فأكيد هي كده هتتقدم.
Okay. And we initially set the deadline for can you remember, guys? What was the initial date?
27 كان 29.
27
كان 27 وحضرتك أجلتي لحد يوم 15/1.
So can we make it on
هو بس يا دكتور اليوم اللي هو كان الديدلاين القديم بتاع يوم 27 ده اتحط فيه ديدلاينز تانية، فهو بس ما ينفعش يبقى قبل شهر قبل بداية 1 يعني.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm trying to figure it out. So I'm trying to set it for 7.
يعني ممكن اوكي ده حلو.
Okay.
7 is okay.
January, okay?
Yes, great.
Okay, yeah. So we can have it, and then hopefully we can finish our presentations to have your participation grades.
تمام يا دكتور.
Okay. So meanwhile, like try to do like the readings, and if you have any question, just email me. I know like this is like too much theoretical dose here. So like try to digest this week, and if you have any question, just email me, okay? And hopefully next lecture, I'm going to give you some empirical examples to help you to make the ideas much more approachable. Yeah?
بليز دكتور، كنت بس عايزة أسأل، هو ينفع حد يبقى لوحده مش لازم يكون في study group ويبعت ايميل لحضرتك ان هو هيختار topic؟
It's much more easier for me just to have like all the questions, okay? Because I guess like you are going to exclude, you know, some topics. So instead of, much more efficient for me to get the questions you are going to focus on, and then I can post, you know, some material and some guidelines for these topics, instead of like posting, you know, some or like giving you a list of readings for all the topics, because I know that some topics you are not going to, some questions you're not going to cover.
Okay, doctor.
Okay, so it's much easier for me. Like these are, so far I've got like people will be working on Tunisia and on Arab socialism and Nasser's developmental policies, and Syria, like the ethnicity and security dilemma in Syria.
Okay.
So I have like 3 main topics. So if like some of you will work on different themes or different questions, just like email me, like one representative like of the class would email me that these are the main topics we are going to work on. So please like offer like list of readings and some material, and post some material on Moodle or Blackboard, whatever.
Okay, doctor.
Okay.
Doctor, about
I can't hear you.
final.
Lojine, I can't hear you.
The final.
Lojine, type. I can't hear you. There are interruptions. I still don't know. I don't receive any kind of instructions, but we can like decide among ourselves, you know, either on Blackboard or open book exam, what works best for you. I'll be happy to do. Okay. Type. So any other questions, guys? Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, doctor.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. Okay. So see you on Wednesday, and let's see how it will go with the faculty.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Okay, doctor.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
Lojine. Okay. Okay. See you next lecture. Bye.